Welcome back to Advent of Tess. Today we're going to be working with a pattern that I call fairy rings for these little donut shapes in the back. So this pattern has an open hexagon with closed triangles on the back at tube pleat spacing, and then it completes the pattern with closed rhombi on the front. So let's dive in. We've got the open hexagon up first. So just like the previous open hexagons we've done, we're going to start on the right hand edge of the paper, go up a grid spacing, run a mountain in about halfway into the paper, and pinch it over a valley one spacing further up. Passing that pleat to the left hand, I'm going to take the next corner and do the same operation. Passing that one to the left hand, I'm going to continue around, and I start to see this puffy star shape forming in the center. And if I'm prevented from seeing that puffy star, that probably means that my first pleat went through a little far. So you'll notice here that I opened stuff up so I could get that puffy star outline and then get the rest of my pleats in place and get my twist in going once around the paper. Once I've got it, I can just push from the top to flatten and squash my open hexagon. And I'm using my bone folder here to smooth out all of the pleats, just as a habit mostly, but also to keep my paper crisp so it responds well when I put in further twists. Next up, we're going to flip over and put closed triangles at tube pleat spacing on the back. This means that I'm going to have a valley, one spacing up from this mountain, a mountain, one spacing up from the valley. My point of interest, my grid intersection of interest for this three-way intersection that will be a closed triangle, is right at the intersection of the mountain of the tube and the existing mountain. So I'll then split into a three-way intersection and squash. And then since my rhombus twist will be back on the hexagon side, I will continue and open the bottom of the tube to create my next triangle. If that twist was going to be on this side, I would go around in the other direction. But here I'm making a unfriendly overlap from the perspective of this side, which will be a friendly overlap from the perspective of the other side. And so I will continue around, always opening the bottom of the tube that I just made to make a new tube, put in a new three-way intersection, squash to form that triangle, and continue on around. Just like yesterday, I can see before I even set up the tube that the center of my triangle is going to be two spacings out along the pleat from the corner of my hexagon hole. And so I can choose which pleat to put in first with that in mind. All 6 of these triangles are going to be exactly the same. And so once I have one, I can use more cues like that 2 out that I was talking about to set up the remainder. So here I've got my 6th triangle set up, and I've got one odd pleat overlap out. And I can choose here to either squash first and rearrange later, or rearrange first and squash later. Either one will work, and there's no right answer, and also not rearranging at all will still work. So now I've got all 6 of my triangles, and yes, I did move a little bit quickly through this, but we saw it already in day 6. And we did have that exact repetition, so you're not missing too terribly much. And I'll grab on any of the pleat overlaps, they're all exactly the same. And then just like on day 6, we're going to open these pleat overlaps, but instead of putting open hexagons, we're going to put closed rhombi. So let's take a closer look. I had my pleat overlap here, and I opened pleat 1, I opened pleat 2, I popped so that pleat 1 was the through line, and this set my central diamond into place, which I can then squash. Rotating around, I'll do exactly the same thing. Open pleat 1, open pleat 2, pop, pleat 1, going straight through. This shows me my central diamond, and then I pick a direction that's the same direction as pleat 2. One other cue here is that the mountain that comes off of the central diamond is going straight to the corner of our hexagon paper. So when I pop this open and I go straight through, I can say, oh, it's this one that goes to the corner, and get my closed rhombus. So we've got cues for all 4 of our pleats, and we can go around and finish making our little tessellation seed. And here we're getting plenty of twist density. We're making good use of our grid. We've got 13 twists on a 16-fold grid. I call that pretty good if you're not just using triangles. And here we have the completed fairy rings. So tomorrow we're going to do much the same thing, but instead of closed triangles, we'll use open triangles. This will be the second time that we use the open triangle twist, and you'll see it'll push these rhombi one spacing out, and they'll end up with corners right at the edge of the paper instead of one spacing in. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow, and happy folding!